The sky over Sector 12 cracked open like thin glass as the alien warships appeared without warning. Their sleek black hulls shimmered in the orange glow of Earth's dying sun. Panic swept across the human colonies like wildfire. No one had expected the Travax to strike this deep into human territory. And yet here they were, hovering above cities, disabling satellites, cutting off power grids one by one. Commander Ethan. Voss stood frozen on the balcony of the control tower, his hands gripping the cold steel railing. Below him, the base scrambled in chaos. Soldiers ran, alarms screamed, and evacuation shuttles fired up engines. But Ethan's eyes were fixed on the lead ship, the one descending like a predator above the Capitol Tower. He wasn't scared. He was calculating. And in that moment, he understood this wasn't just a raid. This was conquest, the first blast. Hit the communications dome. A ring of blue plasma vaporized the top structure, sending metal and debris raining down. Ethan didn't flinch. He turned sharply and barked orders to his team. No contact, no diplomacy. This is full scale. Get the civilians out now. His voice was steady, but inside, he was boiling. They'd broken the treaty, and now they'd pay for it. But just before he could leave the tower, a shadow moved behind him. A tall figure in gold armor stepped through the smoke, her presence commanding, her beauty sharp like a blade. Her silver hair was braided tightly, crown glinting in the flicker of firelight. She wasn't just an enemy, she was their princess. And she'd come alone. Guards raised their rifles, but Ethan held up his hand. Something about her calm expression made him hesitate. She didn't look like someone who had come to kill. She looked like someone on a mission. And then, in perfect Terran language, she spoke. "I don't want your blood. I want your attention." Her voice was steady and strange. Every soldier froze in place. She stepped closer to Ethan while the rest of the base stood tense. No one dared shoot. No one moved. She stopped right in front of him, her golden hand reaching up to touch the front of his uniform. His heart hammered. Her eyes scanned his face, cold and curious, as if she had seen him before. "You're the one from the embassy incident. The one who didn't flinch. When my brother pulled a blade," she said softly. Ethan remembered that moment. He hadn't backed down. And now he was standing face to face with her. Before he could reply, another explosion rocked the base. Debris flew past them. She didn't even blink. Her gaze stayed locked on his. "There are things I must tell you, but not here. Come with me, or your people will die for nothing." Her tone was not a threat. It was a promise wrapped in sorrow. Ethan didn't know if it was a trap, but he nodded. Something deeper than war had just entered the battlefield. As they walked past stunned guards, she whispered something Ethan would never forget. "I was raised to hate humans, but ever since I saw you stand tall that day, something in me broke." Ethan didn't answer. He couldn't. His thoughts were spiraling. The enemy had just saved him from death. And now she wanted him to leave. With her, the ship opened like a blooming flower. Inside was quiet, warm, and strangely peaceful. She led him to a chamber lit by soft blue lights. He could see maps, star systems, and photos. His photos. Surveillance images. Reports about him. His entire file was laid bare. She looked at him again, not as a commander, but as a woman seeing something rare. Then, without warning, she stepped forward. Her hand pushed him gently against the wall. He could feel the metal cool behind him. Her face was inches from his. "You are all I want, human," she whispered. And in that instant, Ethan Voss froze. Ethan didn't move. The wall behind him felt colder than it should, or maybe it was the closeness of the alien princes that had frozen his senses. Her golden armor reflected the soft blue lights of the chamber, casting flickers of warmth on his face. Her hand rested on his chest like a seal, firm but not aggressive. Her words kept repeating in his mind like a slow drumbeat. You are all I want, human. He tried to speak, but his voice failed. She looked into his eyes as if searching for something. Her gaze wasn't hostile. It was curious, intense, and strangely vulnerable. Ethan had been trained to fight aliens, not to understand them. Yet in that moment, he realized she was not here for conquest. At least not the kind he had expected. Why me? He asked at last. His voice was hoarse. What do you want from me? She stepped back slightly, but didn't look away. Because you're different. Because you didn't kneel. Because you didn't hate us when we expected you to. Her voice carried a quiet power, like someone used to being obeyed, but now choosing to explain. Our war council thinks this world should burn, but I asked to come alone. I asked for one chance. One human, you. Ethan's heart pounded. The war outside was still happening. He could feel the vibrations through the floor, hear the distant rumbles through the chamber walls. But all that faded behind her words. She had come here, crossed enemy lines, and entered his base to find him. And the more she spoke, the less she sounded like a soldier. My name is Sarayla, she continued. Daughter of the Empress. My people call me the Silver Flame, but I never wanted to be a weapon. I only followed the duty carved into my birth. Ethan frowned. And now? She raised her chin slightly. Now I follow something else, something I can't explain fully. But I saw your face in the reports. I read how you shielded alien prisoners. How you stopped your own soldiers from mistreating the wounded. It was strange, unnatural to us, but it moved me. And then I saw you in person. Sarayla placed her other hand over his, slowly, gently. Her gloves were warm. Her touch wasn't forced. It was steady. I want to stop this war. And I need someone who isn't like the rest. Someone who won't turn every word into strategy. Ethan blinked. You want peace? I want choice, she said. Peace is too big a word. But I want the chance to try something different, with you. The chamber. Lights dimmed slightly as a sound echoed outside. The ship's systems pulsed, and a soft voice in her language spoke from the ceiling. Sarayla's expression darkened. They've noticed I'm gone too long. My personal guard may come soon. If they do, you will be seen as a prisoner. Ethan glanced toward the door. So what happens now? She looked at him with sudden urgency. I need you to trust me. Stay on this ship. Stay near me. If I bring you as an offering to the Empress, I can control the narrative. I can protect you while I change their view of your kind. He hesitated. You want me to be your prisoner? She touched his cheek, soft and firm. No, I want you to be my reason. The air between them grew tense again. Not with fear, but with something deeper. Recognition. Understanding. Ethan could feel the weight of her decision, and the danger surrounding it. If he stayed, he might be used. If he fled, he'd be hunted. But in her presence, he didn't feel like prey. He felt like a turning point. Outside the chamber, the noise grew louder. Footsteps, voices, orders in an alien tongue. Sarayla turned. Sharply, they're here. I'll speak for you. Do not resist. Just follow my lead. Ethan nodded slowly. His instincts screamed against surrender, but something in her words had struck deeper than logic. She had crossed enemy lines, walked into fire, and exposed her feelings to him. That wasn't politics. That wasn't war. That was something else. The door opened. 2 armored alien guards stepped in, weapons raised. Sarayla stepped in front of Ethan and held up her hand. He is under my authority. He will not be harmed. The guards paused. One looked confused. The other lowered his weapon slightly. By your command, Princess, he said. She took Ethan's hand and led him through the corridor. Every alien soldier they passed stared. Whispers followed them. The Silver Flame had brought a human aboard, not in chains, but hand in hand. As they entered the throne hall of the ship, the Empress's crest glowing above, Ethan realized the battle had changed. Not in the skies, but here. Inside these walls. Inside her. And now he was part of something far greater than he had imagined. The throne hall was massive, carved from a stone that shimmered like it held starlight. Intricate patterns lined the walls, alive with alien technology and old history. At the center of the room stood a long stairway rising toward a high-backed throne, guarded by armored warriors with glowing spears. And seated upon the throne was the Empress of the Trivax. She was tall, elegant, and sharp as a dagger carved from crystal. Her crown rose like wings behind her head, her robe layered with energy-rich fibers that glowed faintly with every breath. Her eyes were colder than space, fixed now on the human standing beside her daughter. Ethan did not bow. He stood still, his spine straight, heart pounding, watching the Empress the way he might a missile about to launch. He didn't understand the language being spoken, but he understood tension. The Empress was not pleased. Sarayla stepped forward and raised a fist to her chest. The room quieted instantly. In their language, she spoke with calm power. Ethan could feel the shift in the air with every word she said. She wasn't asking permission. She was stating intent. And the way some of the guards exchanged glances made it clear this wasn't routine. After a moment, the Empress raised one hand. Her voice was cold, clipped, and commanding. She pointed at Ethan. Sarayla answered before Ethan could move, her voice firm. Then slowly, she turned and translated for him. "She wants to know why I brought you here," Sarayla said. "She thinks you're a weakness, a distraction. She doesn't understand what I've seen." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then show her. Tell her what you really want." Sarayla turned back and said something that caused murmurs to break out across the hall. One of the older guards stepped forward and shouted. Another pounded a staff against the floor. Ethan recognized anger even without knowing the words. "She said I dishonor my role," Sarayla explained. "That I risk everything for a primitive." "I'm not a primitive," Ethan said. "I know," Sarayla replied. "But they don't. Not yet." The Empress stood. Her gaze swept across the hall and then returned to Sarayla. She said something slow and deliberate. Sarayla flinched slightly. Ethan saw it. Her hand trembled for a breath before she steadied herself again. "She gave me a choice," Sarayla said. "Return to duty and execute the next attack or prove that you are worth protecting." "How do I prove that?" Ethan asked. Sarayla turned to him, eyes heavy. "You don't. I do. And that means you must trust me again." Before he could respond, two guards approached and motioned for him to step forward. Ethan looked at Sarayla. She nodded once. He moved toward the center of the room, where a glowing platform began to rise from the floor beneath him. Lights swirled. Above, the crowd grew quiet. A large sphere emerged from the ceiling, displaying holograms and alien script. Ethan felt something scanning his body. Data appeared in the air, his military record, footage of the embassy standoff, moments of him stopping a fellow soldier from beating a Trivax prisoner. More scenes played out, all real, all watched by the Empress. Sarayla stepped to the base of the stairs. She raised both hands and spoke. Her voice trembled with emotion this time. She talked of what she had seen in him, of the way he treated, wounded with dignity, of how he took fire for enemies simply because they were defenseless. She spoke not as a soldier, but as a daughter, as a woman, as someone who believed. The Empress remained still. Then she said something short. The lights dimmed, the platform sank. Ethan was escorted back beside Sarayla. The throne room remained silent for several long seconds. Finally, the Empress nodded. Barely, but it was enough. Sarayla's breath released with visible relief. "She will not order your death," Sarayla said. "Not yet." "That's comforting," Ethan muttered. "She will allow you to stay," Sarayla added. "But you are watched. Every step. Every word." Ethan turned to her. And you, what happens to you? Sarayla smiled faintly. I become either a traitor or a legend. As they left the hall, the tension faded slightly, but eyes followed them with suspicion. In the corridor, Ethan asked the question that had haunted him since she first appeared. Why me? Why risk everything? Sarayla looked at him and answered without hesitation. Because the way you looked at me back then, she said, was the first time I felt seen, not measured. Ethan didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. The war still roared beyond the stars. The blood still flowed on distant battlefields. But in that quiet moment, something new was being born. Something that could shatter empires. Asterisk, the room they gave him wasn't a cell, but it felt like one. Smooth metal walls, a small bed with no pillow, and a floating orb that watched him from the ceiling. The door hissed shut behind Sarayla as she stepped inside. Her armor was gone. She now wore a soft robe made of silver fabric that shimmered like water in moonlight. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, trying to calm the storm. Inside his chest, Sarayla walked over and sat beside him. Her movements were quiet, measured, like someone who had learned to move without making waves. He could smell a faint perfume, not like anything human. Crisp, like a cold breeze through a garden before a storm. You were brave back there, she said. Even when my mother's eyes tried to crush you, I didn't feel brave, Ethan replied. I felt like I was being weighed. You were, Sarayla said, but you didn't break. He turned to her. And you, what will they do to you for bringing me here? She looked away, her expression unreadable. They will watch. They will wait. And if I fail to convince them, they will punish me. Quietly, politely, but they will. Ethan clenched his hands. Then let's not fail. A small smile curved her lips, spoken like a soldier. A soft chime rang from the wall. Sarayla stood and touched the glowing surface. A projection lit up dozens of screens showing unrest. Across different planets, protests, troop movements, explosions. Her people were not as united as they claimed. This is what I wanted you to see, she said. There are those on my side who want this war to end. But they have no voice. No proof that humans are more than what they've been told. She tapped one image. It zoomed in on a human hospital doctors treating wounded, both human and alien. This is from a peace sector. Your people risked their lives to help Trivac civilians during a power failure. My council buried this footage, but I remembered it. Ethan stood beside her. You want to use me to prove your truth. I want to use us, she corrected. Together. They will see us, and they will talk. They will argue. And in their arguments, cracks will form, he met her gaze. And when those cracks grow, she stepped closer. We slipped through. There was a long silence. The kind that didn't need to be filled. Just felt. Then she reached forward and touched his face, gently, her fingers cold from the metal panel she'd touched. Her eyes softened. You're not like them, and maybe I'm not like mine. That's why this could work. He didn't pull away. What if it doesn't? Her hand dropped. Then I become a lesson, and you become a memory. Before he could speak, the wall chimed again. This time a voice came through. Sarayla responded in her native tongue, quick and sharp. She turned to Ethan with a strange expression. They want you to speak at the public tribunal tomorrow. Before the outer council. I thought I was under observation, Ethan said. You still are, she replied. But now you're also bait. Ethan's mouth tightened. Bait for what? For change, Sarayla answered. Or for rebellion, maybe both. She stepped back, giving him space. I'll prepare the speech with you, but know this, if you lie, they will know. And if you show fear, they will devour it. Good. Thing I've stood in front of tanks, he said. Her smile returned. Then you'll do fine. That night, as Ethan lay in the strange bed, staring at the smooth ceiling, he thought about Earth. about his unit. His friends, his family. Would they see him as a traitor now? Or as a bridge? He didn't know. But one thing was clear. He wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was part of something bigger than orders and uniforms. In the next room, Sarayla stood at the balcony, looking out at the stars. She didn't sleep. She couldn't. Her decision had set fire to 1,000 quiet rules. Her choice echoed in chambers older than her bloodline. But she felt something she hadn't felt since childhood, hope, and that terrified her more than any weapon ever could. The tribunal chamber was carved from stone older than most Earth civilizations. Its ceiling reached so high it vanished into shadows. Around the center platform were the curved rows of the outer council, each seat holding a different clans. Elder, priest, or commander. The chamber was silent, watching Ethan like he was both a visitor and a test. Sarayla walked beside him, her silver robe flowing like liquid moonlight. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her calm steps and lifted chin were a shield for them both. The alien guards parted at her gesture, and Ethan stepped onto the speaking platform. A glowing field rose around him, not to trap, but to translate. The Empress sat high above, flanked by her advisors. Her face was unreadable. Her eyes were glass, cold, sharp. The room waited. A voice echoed from the council ring. "Speak, human. Tell us why you are here." Ethan took a deep breath. He didn't have a speech, only truth. And he hoped that was enough. "I came because she asked," he said. "And I stayed because I saw something I didn't expect. I saw your people bleed, cry, protect their children. Just like mine do." A few murmurs stirred through the hall. Ethan continued. "Back home we're told you're monsters. I believed it, until I stood beside a wounded Trivac scout, and she reached for my hand like a scared child. That's when I knew the war had lied to both sides." Another voice, sharp and angry. "Are you saying our warriors are weak?" "I'm saying your warriors are people," Ethan answered. "And people deserve more than endless war." The lights above dimmed slightly, a gesture from the Empress. A new voice rose from the council's right. An elder with skin like polished rock and golden markings across her jaw leaned forward. "Do you deny your race has slaughtered ours, burned our colonies, broken treaties?" "I don't deny anything," Ethan said. "We've all done wrong, but I'm not here to erase that. I'm here to offer something different. Not orders, not weapons. Just myself." Gasps echoed around the chamber. Sarayla stepped forward, standing beside the platform, her voice loud and unwavering. "He speaks with no armor, no army, no tricks. Let his courage shame those who only speak from behind walls." The elder narrowed her eyes. "And what of you, princess? You who abandoned your station for a single human." "I did not abandon," Sarayla said. "I chose, and I will keep choosing." The Empress stood. The room silenced instantly. She looked down at Ethan, then at her daughter, then back again. Her words came slowly, measured, powerful. "I have ruled through storms, through fire, through betrayal. I have seen enemies rise in the name of peace. So tell me, human, why should I allow this farce to continue?" Ethan stepped forward until his boots touched the edge of the glowing ring. He looked up, voice steady. "Because the fire you've ruled through will one day burn your people too. But water can save them, even if it starts with only a drop." There was silence. No one moved. No one spoke. Then, slowly, the Empress sat again. "He may stay," she said. The guards lowered their weapons. Sarayla's shoulders relaxed. "But the Empress wasn't done. If he fails to bring change, the blame will fall on you, Sarayla. And the punishment will be yours to carry." "I accept that," Sarayla replied without hesitation. As they left the chamber, Ethan felt the weight of every eye on his back. He didn't know if he'd won anything, but he knew he'd survived. And that was more than most had done in front of the Travax Council. Back in her quarters, Sarayla stood at the window again. Ethan joined her, the silence between them not awkward, but full. He finally broke it. You didn't have to stand with me back there. Not like that, she turned to him. I did. You don't see it yet, but you're no longer just human. You're the wedge. The opening, he looked down. Feels more like a crack. She stepped closer. Cracks break empires. She reached for his hand again. No pressure, just touch. Her fingers fit between his, different but warm. Familiar in a way that made his chest ache, and once more. In that quiet room above the stars, Ethan froze. Asterisk tensions on the ship had shifted. Where once there had been silence and suspicion, now there was something else. Movement, whispers. The guards still watched Ethan, but their eyes no longer burned with the same hate. Some nodded as he passed. A few even gave space. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning. Sarayla stayed close. Not like a protector, but like a partner. Her every move was watched, every word measured, but she didn't care. Her people needed to see the truth, not in speeches, but in small things. In how she stood beside him, in how she spoke without shame, in how she smiled when he did. The council chambers remained tense. The Empress had allowed Ethan to live, but many were still waiting for a mistake. One wrong step, one wrong word, and everything would collapse. Ethan knew this. So did Sarayla. Still, they moved forward. One evening, they were invited to a cultural gathering, a formal event, full of tradition and danger. Highborn families would attend. Military leaders would be there. And so would those who believed Sarayla had betrayed them. It was a trap, wrapped in velvet and wine. Ethan dressed in the formal robes given to him, deep blue, stitched with the Travax crest and lined with silver thread. Sarayla wore a sleeveless gown, shimmering like a night sky broken by stars. Her markings were bare for all to see, her status clear, her choice undeniable. When they entered the hall, the room fell silent. Conversations paused, eyes locked onto them. No one bowed. No one welcomed, but no one attacked either. That was progress in its own way. They moved through the space like shadows between firelight. Some guests stepped aside. Others turned their backs, but a few, especially the younger ones, stared with curiosity. A child even smiled at Ethan. That small moment filled him with strength. A drumbeat sounded from the far side of the hall. It marked the beginning of the ceremony. The guests gathered around the raised circle in the center. The ritual was called the Binding Flow, a slow, symbolic dance meant to show unity and alliance. When two beings danced, it meant trust. Or, in the eyes of many, something deeper. The priestess stepped forward and raised her voice. Who will open the flow tonight? Silence. Then Sarayla stepped into the circle. Gasps filled the air. One elder shouted in protest. Another stood as if to stop her. But the priestess raised her hand, silencing them all. Sarayla turned to Ethan and extended her hand. Her face was calm, her eyes steady. The choice was his. He didn't hesitate. He walked forward and took her hand. The music began, soft and slow. They moved together in circles, palms joined, steps mirroring ancient patterns. Her fingers brushed his. His hand rested on her waist. Every movement was watched. Every heartbeat felt. To the Travax, this was no simple gesture. This was promise. This was bond, and Ethan understood what it meant. At the end of the dance, the room remained frozen. Then came the voice of the Empress from above. You understand the meaning of what you have done. It was not a question. It was a declaration. Ethan looked up. Yes, I do. The Empress nodded once, then turned and left without another word. The hall remained quiet, unsure what to make of what they had just witnessed. But something unspoken had changed. Back in her chambers, Sarayla stood in front of the mirror. She traced the edge of her jaw where a faint glow had appeared, the ancient mark of the flow, a sign of chosen connection. It would not fade quickly. Ethan sat nearby, silent, watching her. Finally he asked, "Did we just start a political crisis?" Sarayla smiled. "No, we just gave them something new to talk about." He laughed quietly. "I think I'm getting used to alien dances." She stepped over to him, lowering herself until their faces were close. Her voice dropped. "You didn't. Just dance, Ethan. You accepted me, before the stars. Before my bloodline. Before the knives that wait behind every corner." He didn't answer. He didn't need to. She leaned forward. Her lips brushed his cheek, not a kiss of passion, but one of trust, of truth, of something only just beginning, and this time, he didn't freeze. The next day, the whispers became waves. Across the Trivax fleet, soldiers and civilians alike talked of the dance. Some called it betrayal. Others called it a symbol of bravery. But no one ignored it. The act had changed something. It had sparked questions that could no longer be silenced. Sarayla knew what came next. The High War Priest had called for a closed tribunal with her and Ethan present. It wasn't just ceremony. It was a test of loyalty, one soaked in ancient tradition and brutal outcomes. If they failed to justify their bond, both of them could be exiled or worse. She stood in front of her mirror, wearing the royal battle robes of her bloodline. Gold threads ran across her arms and chest like living veins. She looked powerful, controlled, but her eyes were tired. Ethan walked in, his uniform crisp, his face unreadable. For once, he didn't joke. He just looked at her and nodded. "We're ready," she said. They entered the chamber. It was darker than before, lit only by the pulsing glow of the judgment core at its center. The war priest stood tall behind the altar, flanked by ceremonial guards holding staffs tipped with fire. Around them sat the silent judges, eyes glowed under hoods. Ethan could feel the weight of history pressing against him. "The flow binds more than bodies," the priest began. "It binds fate. You stand accused of forging unity where war was commanded. Speak now." Sarayla raised her head. "We chose trust, not because we are naive, but because we are not blind." "Blind to what?" The priest snapped. "To the rot in our own house," she said. "To the war that feeds itself while our people bleed and starve. To the lie that humans are monsters while we become monsters to fight them." Gasps rippled through the chamber. The priest scowled. "And you, human, do you speak in defense of this bond?" Ethan stepped forward. "I came here thinking I'd never leave alive. But she showed me something different. She didn't have to. She could have let me die. Instead, she offered a chance. And I took it." "You admit weakness," one judge growled. "I admit humanity," Ethan replied. "Isn't that what you're all afraid of?" The room went silent. The judgment core pulsed. Slowly, a screen emerged, showing images of chaos on the outer colonies. Trivax citizens protesting, soldiers laying down arms. And one message painted across a wall in 3 languages. "Let them choose Sarayla, turn to the council. You can kill us, or you can listen to what your people are already saying." The priest stared at the screen, then looked at the Empress, who sat in silence behind the veil. The Empress said nothing, just nodded once. Barely, the priest lowered his staff. "This tribunal is ended. The bond will stand. But so will the consequences." Outside, the halls were quiet. Guards no longer raised their weapons. Some bowed. Some stepped aside. Sarayla and Ethan walked through them like a storm had passed and left calm in its wake. Back in her quarters, Sarayla collapsed onto the couch. She let out a long breath and closed her eyes. Ethan leaned against the wall, watching her. He knew the danger wasn't over, but the worst part was behind them. "You okay?" he asked. "I've never been more exhausted," she said. But you're still standing. She smiled without opening her eyes. So are you. He walked over and sat beside her. Their shoulders touched. A soft moment in a world built on steel and fire. She turned her head slightly and looked at him. I never thought I'd find peace with a human, she whispered. I never thought I'd find peace at all, he said. They sat in silence, the hum of the ship the only sound. But it wasn't tense anymore. It felt like something new. Like a space not filled with orders or duty, but something warm and quiet. Something that didn't need permission. She reached over, fingers brushing his. He didn't pull away. Their hands locked gently, like pieces that had always been meant to fit. In the quiet above a world still burning, they held on, asterisk. The stars outside the ship shifted slowly as the vessel entered low orbit around Earth. Ethan stood at the viewing deck, arms crossed, watching his home glow beneath the shield of atmosphere. Blue oceans, brown lands, white clouds. It looked peaceful from here, but he knew the truth. Down there, fear still ruled. Suspicion still festered. Behind him, Sarayla approached. She wore a dark robe trimmed with gold. Her presence was quiet, but her steps were certain. She stopped beside him and stared down at the planet. Her fingers brushed his arm lightly. It wasn't affection, it was reassurance. They were almost at the end of the beginning. The council gave their blessing, she said. With limits. With conditions. I expected worse, Ethan said. You would have accepted worse, she replied. They stood in silence a while longer. Down below, Earth prepared for something it didn't fully understand. Ships had landed on neutral ground. Not weapons. Not troops. Diplomats. Historians. Healers. It was the first mission of peace between humans and Travax in recorded history. And it started with a dance. Sarayla turned to him. The Empress wants you to speak again, not just for her people, but for yours. Ethan looked down. They might not listen. Then speak louder, she said. Later that day, the broadcast chamber lit up. It wasn't flashy. Just clean walls, soft lights, and a single camera lens watching him. He stood alone at the center while Sarayla remained behind the glass. This message would be sent to Earth and across Travax space. A moment to speak without guns, without politics. Just truth. He took a breath and began. I'm Ethan Vuss, soldier, survivor, human. I stand here today not because I won a war. I stand because one alien chose to see me as more than an enemy. He paused. He didn't read from a script. He didn't fake emotion. He let his voice speak from the place that had once been hollow. I watched too many die. I saw my own hands do things I'm not proud of. I believed everything they told me about. Aliens, about how they can't feel, can't care. But then one stood before me, not with a weapon, but with a question. He looked toward the glass. He could see her silhouette there, unmoving, listening. She asked me what I wanted. And I didn't know. I still don't, but I know what I don't want. I don't want another child to grow up hating a face they've never seen. I don't want my friends to keep dying in the name of old anger. He lowered his voice slightly. And I don't want to walk away from the only person who ever stood in front of a galaxy and chose me. The screen faded to black. Hours later, the ship received a signal. Earth's council had replied. They were cautious, but curious. They had questions, demands, fears, but they hadn't shut the door. And in diplomacy, that was the loudest invitation possible. In the days that followed, Sarayla and Ethan moved between ships, cities, and chambers. They answered questions from humans and aliens alike. Some welcomed them. Others spat at their names, but neither turned away. The bond they'd formed wasn't just for themselves anymore. It belonged to something bigger. A quiet rebellion made of words instead of fire. One night, after a long meeting with Human Command, they returned to Sarayla's quarters. The stars above Earth glowed brighter than usual. Ethan removed his jacket and sat on the edge of the bed. Sarayla joined him. Her hand rested gently on his. "No matter what happens after this," she said, "you gave me something no war ever did." He looked at her. "What's that?" "Choice," she whispered. He leaned toward her. This time it wasn't hesitation. It wasn't fear. It was something earned. Their lips met in a kiss that didn't ask for permission. It simply belonged. Like gravity, like sunrise, like peace slowly finding its shape. When they pulled apart, the silence held them close. The war hadn't ended. Not yet. But the weapons had been lowered. The eyes had opened. And the first thread of something fragile had been tied between worlds, a bond no bullet could sever, and it began with a whisper and a hand on the wall.